Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, Speed. So I'm going to start a little video log on my current project, which is the Freewing F14. This is actually my second F14. My first one, I had quite a few flights on. I really enjoyed that airplane. Probably my favorite Freewing jet. So I just picked this one up. This is a Kit Plus, so I got to power with my own setup. But yeah, so this time, last time, on my first F14, I just did a quick repaint. This time I'm going to start filling up panel lines and do a really nice job on this one, the full cockpit and all that stuff. So this will be video one of a series showing how I refurbish everything and make it look nicer. If you want a really nice video on how to do this type of thing, check out the RC Geek, his channel on YouTube. He's got a bunch of really good videos on how to do this type of thing to your ARFs. So anyways, follow along, and hopefully this thing will turn out pretty good, and I'm hoping to get most of it done on my Christmas break. So even though it's 48 degrees and raining, it's I gotta do something. So here we are in the garage, cold, freezing, working on airplanes. Enjoy and come along the ride with me. Thanks. Okay, so first step in doing a refinish on a foam ARF is we're going to fill all the panel lines. You can kind of see them here. They're not terrible, but it just looks a lot nicer when they're all filled in and the airplane's smooth. And in fact, you can still kind of see the lines after you fill them all in. So you can still see where they're at. You can go back and draw them in and make them look a little more realistic than just these kind of big panel lines. And also another thing I like to do is, you can seem to focus, is fill in all of the like servo trenches that are on these. So there's, see where all the colored wires are? So they have these big trenches in there and they stuff the wires in there, which is no big deal. I mean, it's how they make ARFs as cheap as possible and as affordable as possible. So what we do is we go and we fill all that stuff in so you can't see it anymore. And it just makes a much nicer looking model. So another thing I do is, I'll show you on this one. So you see here, these have pin hinges in them, and they leave these really big, this thing won't focus, they leave these really big holes where the hinges are. And by that I mean these spots right in here, these are all hinges. And those are another thing, if you were to just paint this model, you could still see those, and they just don't look very nice. So what I do is I cut little strips of aluminum tape, and I cover over those spots first before I get into the bodywork and filler and all that. And then I'll go in, like you see here, I'll start filling in the lines with lightweight spackle. And this is the best spackle you can buy at the moment, Sherwin-Williams shrink-free spackling. It's like a lightweight style spackle. So it doesn't really add a lot of weight to the airplane. So the first step is to fill all the panel lines, fill the servo trenches and the hinge spots and all that stuff. So I've already started on some of it. Here's the lower wing. There's a lot of panel lines in these wings, and also these wings have multiple pieces that are glued together. So there's, like in here, there's kind of a step right there, and by step I mean it's not smooth. So we're filling all that in, fairing it out, trying to make it look nice and smooth. I pulled the canopy off because we're going to be redoing the whole cockpit. And these are the power systems. So these are a little bit better. These are used. I got these used. These are a little bit better than the original units that these came with. A little higher kV motor, a little more efficient fan design. So I'll be using two of those with the RC Geek center burners. So yeah, so this is the first step, filling everything, and then we'll check in after it's all filled in, and we'll go on to the next step. So basically I do this, I do the parts one side at a time, because you don't want to put a bunch of stuff on and then flip it over, do the other side, or handle it while this is all wet. We'll just get messed up. So the first side is all done here, at least for the first application. So once everything dries, which will probably take a while because it's so cold, I'll go back and I'll sand all this stuff with some like 150 grit or 180 grit, smooth it out, and then go back over it and refill any areas that might seem low or need to be refilled again. What you want is pretty much a perfectly smooth surface with minimal like pockets where it didn't get filled. So that's what you're shooting for. And after this step, after we reapply them, we'll seal all of the panel lines with polyurethane clear coat. So we used to, when we first started doing this, we would strip all the paint, all the decals off of the stock scheme. That in itself was a lot of work. What I found out was that it's really not that necessary. So we pretty much just leave everything on spots like this, where this is all a decal. This whole area is a decal. It's a water transfer. Where it goes over the panel lines, you're going to want to use a fingernail or something to basically break out the decal where it crosses over the panel lines. The reason you want to do that is because what happens is the decal bridges over the top of the line, and it might look like it's filled in, but it's not. It's just a really thin layer of decal. So you might do all this work, and then at the end when you're painting it or you're handling it, it'll crush in, and then you'll notice these spots where it just looks messed up. So you want to kind of break away any spot where there's a panel line underneath the decal if you're going to leave them on. So that's just a little tip. Also, to apply this filler, there's a number of different methods you can use. This is a hotel card that I've modified for smaller areas and bigger areas. You can use that. I've also got blue spreaders, like a 3M style blue spreader, kind of like that one over there. You can use those. But the hotel keys work really well, or an old credit card or anything of that nature works just fine. So those are just a couple little tips for you. Yep, and after this dries, we'll sand it a little bit and show you what it looks like after it's sanded, and we'll keep going from there. Okay, so I got all the parts spackled in completely, at least for the first coat. So after doing all the spackle on this model, I'm kind of having second thoughts about the polyurethane. There's not that many panel lines, and I'm going to be doing a two-tone low-vis gray camo job, which it's real flat. It hides a lot. So I'm not super concerned with the texture. I think a lot of that gets filled in with primer. And as you can tell, this is actually pretty smooth foam on this one. Sometimes you get models that are a little bit bumpy, but this one looks pretty good. So I've used this method in the past, but so the way I do it is instead of using polyurethane clear coat after sanding off all the spackle to seal everything, what I'll do is I'll sand everything smooth, and then I'll go straight to primer, and I'll use the primer to seal off the panel lines. It doesn't seal quite as good as the poly, which is kind of a good thing in this case because it'll still show you where the lines are at really well. So I think I'm gonna give that a try. It's a little less work, it's a little less weight than doing everything in polyurethane. Saves you some time. Now, if I was doing like a glossy paint job, I would definitely want to seal everything really good with polyurethane. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go with just a primer over the panel lines and then just sand it all out and do it that way. You'll notice too that I pulled the retracts out as well as the center cover here. I'm gonna do a couple of mods to the gear and change tires and stuff. Also, I noticed from my first F14 to this one has like a real light primary spring and then a stiff secondary spring. I don't remember my first one being like that. I remember it being all stiff, and it sat kind of high in the back because they didn't compress very much, and so I ended up cutting my springs to make it sit lower to the ground like it should. So that's kind of nice that they did that. It's kind of neat. So anyways, but I'm gonna do a couple mods. These are really nice wheels and tires. They got bearings in them, ball bearings, and which makes them real nice. And they look great. They're a little heavy, and they're a little on the small side. So I have something I'm going to do to change that. I got some really cool tires and some really neat 3D printed hubcaps that look super scale. So I'll be using those. I'm also going to be making the hook movable with a servo, so I'll show you guys how I do that. So I pulled it off for now while I'm doing all this bodywork stuff. Yeah, so once this is all dry, we'll give it a sanding, and that'll be it. For the panel lines, I'll probably have to go back and touch them up. You can see like these ones through here, how they're already a little on the low side. And by low, I mean not filled in all the way. So after I sand everything, I'll have to go over the model again just to double check, make sure I got all the spots. So anyways, this should be it for this episode. And stay tuned for more progress with the F14 this week. I'll be posting videos hopefully every day or two to keep myself motivated to get this thing knocked out real quick. And that'll be it. We'll see you next time.